We throw out over 5 billion toothbrushes a year. That's enough to circle the planet 14, 15 times. Every toothbrush we ever owned probably still exists because they're not recyclable. And that really kind of stuck with us like, wow, this is like a close second to plastic straws and nobody's talking about it. We need to solve for this now.
I've heard that the Kardashians are SURI users, and I've also heard that you've had praise from Sir Jony Ive, who designed many of Apple's products. But what is it that makes SURI special?
It is that attention to detail through all the touch points, through our customer service, communication, through our messaging, through tiny little angles on the brush, which combine to create that experience, which gives us the 4.7 rating with 15,000 reviews. And we're here for the long run. We want to build a 100-year brand. And so if that means building it brick by brick, we're willing to do that.
Welcome to Retail Disrupted. On today's episode, we are talking all about the oral care category. It's a category that's been dominated by a couple of huge legacy players, and traditionally, it hasn't seen a ton of innovation. It's just sort of been static for a very long time. Well, Mark Rushmore and Gyve Safavi are on a mission to change this. Mark and Gyve are co-founders of SURI, the award-winning recyclable electric toothbrush brand. They are both joining us on the podcast today to talk about their journey and how their sustainable, design-led approach is disrupting the category. Gyve and Mark, it's so great to have you both here. Last time we spoke, you guys had just come back from the US after being on Good Morning America. I know there's a ton of exciting things happening for you in that market, which we are going to get into, including a major launch in Target and also in Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop stores. So we are going to spend a lot of time today talking about growth. SURI is now a 24 million pound business and a profitable one. But let's go right back to the beginning. And Gyve, I'll come to you first. Tell us, what inspired you to launch SURI?
Natalie, first, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having us. We started working on SURI with the idea that we could make a toothbrush that delivered an exceptional clean and was better for our planet in terms of pushing boundaries in terms of sustainability. When Mark and I first looked at the share data, we saw that there were two large brands that held over 75% share. And naturally, most people at that point would say, great, this is a market I don't want to get into. It's obviously got two dominant players that I'll never make a dent in. But the first thing we did was we did a lot of qualitative and quantitative interviews. At the time we used any tool we could find. For the quantitative ones, we used SurveyMonkey. And some of the things that came out were really interesting. We thought surely, with two brands that dominate in terms of the shares, that most needs would have been addressed by now. But a lot of people were telling us things like, my battery doesn't last, my toothpaste gets really grimy when I'm charging it. And there are all these flashing lights. I don't know what all the other modes do. I only use one. And so we realized then that a lot of the innovation that was being provided to consumers weren't necessarily the ones that they wanted. And that naturally, it's a bit like business 101, as Mark and I often say. We took those insights and tried to build them into our product.
And do you feel that there is an element of complacency? If we just take a step back, generally speaking, when a category or an industry is dominated by just a couple of players, do you think, I guess that's the risk for any established business, is that need to kind of keep innovating. And if they're not going to, then that sort of opens up an opportunity for a challenger brand like yourselves.
I would say, I don't know whether it's complacency, but I think it's also pretty difficult, where when you have such large market share to continue innovating, to come up with what's next when you already have this huge share of the market, your product already delivers a great job. And so, we both worked at large corporations before where, our job was to find out, how do we continue to increase the value or the price or the innovation? And, sometimes you're trying to find it from maybe an empty well. And so I think in a way that sort of allows, probably more niche brands like ours to find a specific sort of niche and go after that more effectively.
And speed is such an important factor. I mean, without saying that people can look at our LinkedIns and find out, but sometimes in large corporations, it takes 6 to 9 years to launch a new product. And so you got to think that the insights that sort of set that sort of product journey happen 6 to 9 years before the product launches. And often people can get carried away and be like, yes, people really do want apps that smile at them. This is going to be great. And then it comes to market, you're like, I have enough apps, don't need an app. And that was one of the insights we found. The other one is Mark and I both had a daughter, not together, both had daughters right when we were starting the company.
Actually, I think your daughter was born first. Then we closed our first round of funding, and then my daughter was born all in the space of about 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's a busy 8 weeks.
Yeah. Son first. So I was just becoming a parent in the beginning. And I think something happens when you become a parent, which is that maybe it's just for us, but we found that like it was really important to create a company with a strong sense of purpose. And that's why sustainability is one of our core values. It's not our only value. Design and performance are also two strong values that we hold, but it's something that we want to keep pushing the boundaries on even setting with our other values. It doesn't mean that we are a sustainable first brand, which there are many, which is sustainability above everything else. But we think that's what makes us unique, and that is also contributing to the future for the next generations to come.
That's really interesting. And I want to come back to that point because that was actually something I had intended to ask you about where sustainability fits as part of your overall strategy. And but first, let's just back up a little bit because you've called out a couple of really interesting points already around the importance of speed, especially when shopping habits and shopping values, I would say, have evolved so dramatically. And we all brush our teeth. But there's been very little innovation in this space, which is something that you touched on early on. So, Mark, I'll come to you. Can you just give us the elevator pitch? And I'm sure you've had to do this countless times for investors. But what is it that makes SURI special? And sort of why would a consumer choose SURI over an established brand?
I think the first thing that I'll go to, and it's maybe not the elevator pitch, but we just crossed 15,000 reviews on Trustpilot with a score of 4.7. So we are by far the most highly rated electric brush on Trustpilot. And I think in a way, like when people say, what's the secret sauce? And it really is that we have, delivered this product and experience to consumers who really, really love it. As a result of them loving it, they tell all of their friends and their family. Our excuse upon word of mouth referral, when we look at our attribution, it sits above any of our advertising, right? And I think that in itself is probably the essence of what we're doing, because we really look to over deliver on every element of the experience. Now, when I first met Gyve back a long time ago now, but in our very first encounter, I was like really impressed with Gyve had all these tricks he could do on his iPhone, and it soon became apparent he was a big Apple fan. In fact, sometimes internally, I don't know if you like me telling everyone this, but we call him Steve Jobs. He has a fanatical attention to detail. And I think actually, while that can sometimes be a little bit frustrating for our design teams, it's the accumulation of like all these like really little decisions, which like individually seem relatively meaningless, but actually in the aggregate, like the consumer somehow feels like, the tension when you lift the box has been very carefully measured and calibrated and iterated multiple times. I've never known someone who's so passionate about a user guide. I mean, you'd think that could take maybe a week, but you've managed to turn that into like a longer, more detailed project. And if you go to his drawer,
Take it as a compliment.
like, yeah, but if you go to his drawer, he's got the user manuals of at least 40 brands across a range of products, and looking at, and he'll come to me and say, "Oh, Mark, should this one be a picture, or should we have more words here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think the first iteration is fine, but actually, is that attention to detail through all the touch points, through our customer service, through our communication, through our messaging, through the tiny little angles on the brush, which combine to create that experience, which gives us the 4.7 rating with 15,000 reviews. And ultimately, if you can really make people love a product, then they're more likely to use it. And when it comes to brushing your teeth, the best thing that people can do is brush twice a day for the full 2 minutes. And if you do that, you're going to see a massive improvement in how your teeth feel, but also in your overall oral health. And again, you see that in our reviews. People say, "Oh, my teeth have never felt so clean." Like, "Oh my, I didn't know my teeth could feel this clean." And the reason is because people enjoy using it more, and so they are using it more. So yeah, sorry, that's the worst elevator pitch ever. That's probably more like a cruise ship. Across
That's what podcasts are for. It's all good. No, that's so interesting. And I have to say, I am personally such a convert. And yeah, just for our listeners, I have not been paid to endorse this product. This is not an ad. I just genuinely love my toothbrush. And my old electric toothbrush was just sort of bulky and gross and loud, and I had to charge it all the time. And it was just really over-engineered with like Bluetooth and apps and all these things that I did not ask for. So I love how you've just simplified it and you've solved all those pain points. And for me, especially the charging, like anything to sort of reduce the mental load, I love the fact that I only have to charge my toothbrush like once a month. And so that means that I'll travel with it and I just use it so much more. So I am a huge fan. And I guess to go back to something that Gyve mentioned earlier around sustainability, I mean, these are all amazing benefits even before we start talking about sustainability. So I guess my question to you both is, when you speak to customers, what is the feedback? Is it that, you've simplified the process and I just love the ease of it? You're giving us what we actually want instead of all these useless apps and things. Or is it like, I care about sustainability and that's really going to be core to whether, I purchase your toothbrush or buy from a more established brand?
So I'd say two things like straight off the bat. One is, we try our best to be as sustainable as possible, but we openly admit we're far from perfect, right? Like,
and we literally say that on our website.
Yeah. And so, I think Patagonia, who we have a huge respect for as well, their recent climate impact report as well says, we are not we're not sustainable. It is, we are creating more. And so it's not like a perfect world in which like this is going to solve climate change. Far from it. However, I think even before, I had the customers respond to it, Gyve and I truly felt, we want to do something which has less impact and we want to make it as sustainable as possible, even if it's not going to be perfect, even if it's a drop in the ocean versus what's like required at a global level. Like, it just feels right and meaningful to work as hard as possible to show and to push the boundaries of how do we make this as sustainable as possible. And candidly, it's like a never-ending journey. It's not like we're like, okay, we're sustainable now, it's done. We are, like even now we're assessing new materials. We're looking at all sorts of different ways to improve. And so I just really, that's so important. And then in terms of how the customers respond, I think the analogy we often use, I think, is that, for some people is the number one most important thing. For some people, they don't mind at all. But truthfully, like, whether you buy for that or not, like, we don't believe there should be any compromise in terms of either how it's produced, the performance it gives you, or how it looks. And I think that's been the key thing. So it really depends by segmentation is the short answer.
And I would just build on that to say that, like, ultimately you buy a toothbrush to clean your teeth, not to be the most sustainable thing in the world. And I think, one of the things that we do differently is that because it's a core value for us, we measure and we track and we try to improve on it. And so, as Mark was saying, we look at innovation. We're looking at materials that are more sustainable, rather than like just what is the best product we can put on the market. The choices we make on the finishings, the laminates, the paper are all taking that into account. It's harder, right? Because there's a cost that often comes with it. And there are brands that don't do carbon offsetting or even share what they're doing fully on sustainability. Our goal isn't to compete on that vector, really. Like, that is the vector where we'd love to have open dialogue with competition, where they could say, hey, this is what we've done. It worked really well. We share this planet together, so maybe you should consider it also. And, the features we can compete on, design, the performance. And so that's something that, I guess the one data point that I wanted to share that really got us was that, we throw out over 5 billion toothbrushes a year. That's enough to circle the planet nearly 14, 15 times. And the first thing that really got to Mark and I when we were looking at the sort of how to make this company more sustainable, we want to have a purpose at the core, was that when you really think about that, we realized every toothbrush we ever owned probably still exist because they're not recyclable. They're made out of, petroleum blended plastics, often with multiple different layers of plastics that make it impossible to pull apart and also recycle. There are some schemes where you can send them off to, but nobody's doing because it's just not convenient. And that really kind of stuck with us. Like, wow, this is like a close second to plastic straws, and nobody's talking about it. We need to solve for this now if we're going to create a company that produces more waste in this area.
Actually, Natalie, we have a world exclusive for you. We got a grant, and we've been working with the University of Exeter, amongst other sort of leading professionals, to work out what we can do with all our returned heads. So we have a huge return rate of our heads, which we offer for free here in the UK. And so we've gathered all those heads up and we separated them into the separate colors. We found out a way to grind them, and they're made from plant-based materials, so from cornstarch. And we found a way to actually injection mold them using 100% of the product to make new products. So we've got these new soap dishes, which we will be revealing shortly, which are 100% made from people's returned heads. So we just really want to sort of demonstrate there's a lot of initiatives that we do in the background that we don't necessarily talk about, not because, we're trying to, sell this more to consumers, but more purely because like we're trying to do the right thing and learn as we go. So we've gone through multiple iterations. We tried 3D printing initially, but actually injection molding feels like the best way forward.
So we looked at heads too. So putting them back into heads. And the controversial thing is with consumers whether or not they would approve that. And so in our early research, we found a lot of people did not want a recycled head in their head.
It's just like a step too far.
So we said we'll
Fair
make
enough.
economical products.
That's very cool. Wow. That's so interesting. So I'd like to talk about some of the lows, some of the challenges, or maybe some of the mistakes. And I think this is really valuable for our listeners because we know that the best businesses are those that view failure as part of the innovation process. It's just sort of a natural part of, doing business. So I guess my question to you both is, looking back, was there anything you would have done differently?
No, everything's gone perfectly well, and we've never had any problems.
Yeah, I mean,
Wonderful. Next question.
the list is long. So,
Are we talking the problems like in the last 48 hours? Are we talking
The big sort of way, was there anything, I guess in the early days as you were setting out, is there anything that maybe you with hindsight, you might have done differently?
You know what? I think I want to share like new ones because we probably shared like some initial ones from when we set up. I think two things that spring to my mind are, one, as you mentioned at the start of the podcast, in 2024, we had around 24 million in revenue and we made a very healthy profit. I think what we probably, when you start a company, you're very, very lean, extremely lean. And I think we, to this day, kind of hold that philosophy true. But I think we probably at some point, we kept ourselves too lean rather than hiring people, thinking that we could do more with less. And actually, there are some times where actually we were, penny wise and pound foolish or something like that, to the extent that like, had we invested, we would have like not suffered as much, 6 months later.
Put some numbers behind it. We were 15 people, and then a quarter and a half later, we were 30. So we had to ramp up on our hiring. And obviously, when you double in size, things break. Processes aren't there, and they have to be quickly made. So yeah, I agree with Mark. We should have probably been more pound wise than penny wise.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I would just build on that is that as founders, you are given many different signals. One of those signals is be profitable as soon as you can. It's profitable businesses at scale today. Gone are the ones that don't make any money. And so you're thinking, got to be profitable, got to scale. And they go in different directions, and you've got to kind of pull them back together always. And, sometimes those dots are meant for you. Sometimes they're not meant for you at this point in the journey. And so you're faced with a lot of information that you get from whether it's people who scale their businesses, people who are potential acquirers, people, investors, and you need to balance them with where you are in your journey with all the other sort of data points you have. And sometimes you get them wrong. And I think, there is not one founder I know that does not remember those moments of hearing a piece of advice and then getting it wrong in translation, or hearing a piece of advice and not taking it. So for example, on us not hiring enough people, we had a potential investor early on who said, "You guys don't have enough people. I'm really worried about that." And we said, "What do you mean? Just give us money and we'll hire more people." It's pretty simple. And they were right. Like we had to. That was a bit of a lot of people we hired last year, and there was a lot of processes we built. But fortunately, Mark is a very process driven top line picture guy, and so we've managed to smooth it out
And actually, I'm glad to report that we're substantially larger now than the 24 million that we did in 2024. So 2025 is in another league.
I'll have to update my intro then, if that's publicly available information. And at what point did you feel that this could be something big? Was there a particular moment for you guys? Or did it just sort of happen?
I think it's been multiple moments for me. I remember our first ever £10,000 in revenue in one day. We were in a restaurant in that like basement and we just hired Hannah.
oh yeah,
Do you remember? And like this poor woman had just been hired and we were trying to have dinner with her, but we're like, we just couldn't rub something at our phone, just like being like, oh, look, we're over, okay. And then I just remember thinking like, wow, £10,000 in one day. That is, gosh, I never thought it could be this big kind of thing. And now, it is significantly more than that every day. So that was one moment for me. And I think another one was, we are launching in Target in a few weeks' time. And that had been something that we'd always sort of said from the very beginning, like, hey, it went on great one day. Like, wouldn't that be a great retailer to launch with? And actually sort of, getting the go ahead and seeing it all come to life, that was also a big one for me.
I mean, for me, it was a lot of I don't think it's one moment. I think there's a series of moments in our first year where Mark kept on pinching me and being like, "Oh my God, look at this." And I could talk more about that, but I think we won the Times Earth Fund, which was about 250,000 free advertising in the Sunday Times. And that was literally like right around when we were launching. And something went off there. I was like, we must be really press for this. And then we won the Indie Best award for the Independent within the first 2 months of launch. And I thought, I was like, how did they even get the product in time? To give us that. Even our PR, we had a freelancer helping us on PR, and he was like, "Oh, it's so fast." So those two anchors are very early anchors where I thought we have something that if we can get it right, we could get a lot of momentum behind it.
And it's funny because like those were the early ones, but like I would say like just in the last couple of months, like something's shifted again. So the dental industry, which is really important for us, have an annual award, the Dental Industry Awards. It's called
Dentistry.com.
And we just won Dental Brand of the Year, as voted for by the whole industry, by dentists, by hygienists, by the people who use the product and know what works. And that felt like that was a transformative moment. And then another one was just over the last 2 months, we were named the best electric toothbrush to buy, editor's pick, by several of the leading reviewers of electric toothbrushes in the world, including Electric Teeth, Expert Reviews were Product of the Year. Actually, we got the award ceremony.
Good housekeeping also.
Good housekeeping. And when we released our version 1, they ranked us 17 out of 20, which, we were grateful to be on the list, but it kind of hurt that we were so low down. And then to now be joint first on their list with a 97 out of 100 score, it felt like, wow, like we've taken all the lessons, all the things that we wanted to improve into our new product. And, we're seeing the results from our customer reviews, from our sales, but also from, these expert reviewers. And it sort of feels like, well, if we can do that and be number 1 rated, what else can we do as we launch new products?
Yeah, super exciting. I was going to actually ask you about some of these endorsements and some of your fans more generally. I know that Good Morning America has named SURI a must-have product. I've heard that the Kardashians are SURI users. Maybe you can tell me if that's true or not. And I've also heard that you've had praise from Sir Jony Ive, who designed many of Apple's products, including the iMac, iPod, iPhone, and iPad. So how does it feel to have such high-profile supporters? And how have these endorsements influenced your growth or design philosophy?
I mean, I would say it hasn't changed at all. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it's a great pat on the back, right? Sir Jony Ive, we wrote him an email directly. I've been a huge fan of obviously everything he's done. A big, huge fan of Apple since inception, or since I was born in '83. And we didn't get a response at first, and then we wrote again, and we sent him brushes, and we got a lovely email back being like, absolutely brilliant, guys, well done, love the brush. And then I think subsequently, like, a large order was placed to his office. So Mark and I were both, I vividly remember that moment. We were both in bed because it was like, I don't know, we both have young kids. We're often in bed quite early.
I think it was about 10:30.
10:30, but we were on our phones, as you shouldn't be, checking emails and random stuff. And all of a sudden I texted him. I was like, look at the email we got. And we both, like, sitting there, called each other, giggling. Our better halves were like, what is going on? But I think we were like young schoolboys, couldn't be more happier to have received that email at 10:30 in bed. And then the other ones, I think, are really more just luck.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you get luckier the more you practice. So we launched in Erewhon stores, which are these really high-end stores in LA. And it may be that one of them is in Calabasas, where I think the Kardashian family live. And, like, it was nice. Like, it was pretty funny when some friends started sending me messages being like, oh my goodness, have you just seen you're on a Kim Kardashian story? Or so that was nice. And then, we get random ones to this day. So we had a really nice shout out from that actor Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
An article where he must have shown it is like his top 10 things purchased from there on.
Yeah, and so that was cool.
Fab.
But yeah, I think what's really nice is that whoever it is, whenever they buy it, just to have an emotion. You mentioned earlier on that you love your toothbrush, and love is the word that comes up most frequently in our reviews. And it's just nice.
How rare is that, right? Who says I love my toothbrush?
Yeah.
Like we both weren't in the category before, and I'll tell you, we didn't love our toothbrush. So.
Yeah, it's not the sexiest of categories. It's pretty utilitarian toothbrushes,
Right.
but you guys have done something pretty special there to make people love their toothbrushes.
I think, what a joy, that we get to generate any sort of positive emotion in other people, full stop. Like, and to be able to then those people, because they've had this positive emotion, want to share it with the people that they love, whether it's their family or close friends. Like, what a privilege and what a cool thing we get to do.
And because it's a subtle joy, right? Like, it's something that takes time to build. People have to brush with it a few days, realize, oh, I really like this. It's such a great tool for introductions, whether, we'll send the product to somebody, whether it's press or investors, and you won't hear from them for at least probably a few weeks, and then they'll come back, and you either get, like, maybe they don't, but if they do, they'll come back and they're using it, and every day they're thinking, wow, I really like this product. And so you're with them for quite a while. It's not something that you use and you kind of put in a shelf and forget about it. It's something you use every day, and it can actually have a meaningful change on somebody's life.
It's a commitment, isn't it?
Now, but it can, right? My wife used to have a very loud electric toothbrush, and one of the things we decided early on was that we needed to be able to hear each other with the product we were creating, because you will have conversations in the bathroom if you're like, sorry.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say is the magnet. Like, I mean, I'm committed because of that magnet. So my story's not going anywhere.
Exactly. No. And actually, it works as quite a good marketing tool in the end, because a lot of people will be like, oh, I was at a friend's house and I saw this beautiful toothbrush mounted on the mirror, and I had to say, what's that? So I think that's been great.
I had a mentor early on who was like, oh, you're going into the toothbrush category. How are you going to get word of mouth on that? Like, nobody's going to talk about the toothbrush. And so the magnet was definitely one of the things we were like, well, that's the way. You will find it. It'll be like how you saw Aesop in people's bathrooms when you're washing your hands. So that was a big one for us.
Yeah, interesting. So you touched on Target, and I'd like to explore US expansion, but I'd also like to explore the shift to physical retail more generally. So if we start with that, I know in the UK, shoppers can find SURI in Boots and Currys and other stores. was that always the plan to sort of build credibility online and then launch into bricks and mortar? And I guess more generally, if there's anything you can share around the learnings of that transition, I think that would be really valuable for our listeners.
Sure. So I think we've never thought of ourselves, like some people say, like we're a D2C brand. And it's like, I've always found that like quite an odd concept, like as in like you're a channel brand, whereas actually like we're a brand for a consumer. Do you know what I mean? Like we exist to help consumers, enjoy brushing their teeth with a product that gives a great clean, a beautiful design, and is more sustainable. And so as a result, like we want to be where the shopper is. And if the shopper is in a store, we want to be in the store. And if the shopper's online, we want to be online. And we just really want to be able to offer, a great proposition to the shopper at the point that's most convenient for them. And so, it was always in our long-term intention to be omni-channel. When you look at the numbers in America, for example, 68% of people buy their electric toothbrush in store. And the vast majority of the rest are on Amazon or on the retail websites of some of those large retailers. It's slightly larger in the UK. And so I think, our ambition is to be this globally loved brand, which gives people a superior oral care experience. And I think in order to deliver on that mission, it's imperative that we're across channels. And in terms of our experience, I mean, we could do a whole other podcast just on that, but I have retail experience from my time at the multinational I used to work at. And so I was quite familiar with, selling into the large retailers. I think what's been really heartwarming is actually their support for a challenger brand, essentially, to say, okay, we understand you're not going to be able to do all of this, but, to support us. And we have a saying internally that Rome wasn't built in a day. And so, we don't expect to go in and, have a full bay and to take over the store from the get-go. But instead we said, look, we're going to come in and we're going to prove, that we can improve rate of sale with each improvement in packaging and merchandising and product and awareness and campaigns. And we're here for the long run, like we want to build a 100-year brand, not something that's flash in a plan. And so if that means building it brick by brick, we're willing to do that if they're willing to go on that journey with us.
Totally. I mean, I have no retail experience, so I'll defer to Mark on that. The one thing I will say is like, I'm very impatient. And so always taking a view of the long view makes sense because, early on, I think we wanted to get into Boots within our first week. And Mark is very persistent and he's very good at building relationships. And he was like, it's going to take time, but I'm texting them. And I would say that's one of the qualities that is absolutely amazing about Mark is his persistence and his ability to put the relationship first over anything. And that is what I would say has managed to take us from strength to strength with our retail partners, showing them that like we're here to build a relationship and a business together. And the thing that's come out of it that we say now is our strategy, but we really were making it up in the beginning, was that, when you start online, you're able to build awareness relatively affordably, right? Because if you're able to get online sales, then that awareness goes up and some people won't consider you till you're in store. But if you were to go straight into retail without that level of awareness that you generated online, it would be quite hard to sell. People wouldn't know you and you'd have to do a lot of above the line advertising, which we couldn't afford when we were starting out. And so the strategy made sense to do that. We went first to Amazon, as we also were part of their early accelerator program for sustainable brands. So we got a lot of tips and support from them.
And you were based in their office, right?
We were, yes. They were very kind to let us stay in their office. And the program was 2 months, but we stayed for almost a year. We got to eat in their amazing Shoreditch offices and use all their facilities for free. They never charged us a dime. And as a startup,
They gave us money.
So they actually gave us money, yes, a little bit of money, and
even better.
Better, yes. It was completely the opposite, but that is extreme value. Like free rent for a startup in the early day, first year, is such a savings because it's either that or you're paying. We had a WeWork pass at one point, but we were kind of sharing it between team members. It's amazing value, and so going from D2C into Amazon and then into retail was a perfect trajectory in terms of building up that awareness. And now we've managed to do it in the US. with large retailers coming on board.
Yeah. And during your time at Amazon, I'm just curious, what were some of the benefits? Obviously, you just mentioned, free office space, which is always a good thing. But in terms of understanding more about e-commerce, obviously you guys were already doing D2C, but how did that sort of shape your current strategy, your current kind of view on e-commerce?
So I'm not, I mean, it was a few years ago, so our current views probably like evolved like fairly significantly
Yeah. Okay.
but they offer, there was a suite of trainings. We got to meet other entrepreneurs. They actually, we did a call with the founder of Ring doorbells.
Oh, cool.
It sold to Amazon for $1 billion. And he had some really interesting advice. Really, one of the key things I remember him saying is like, up until like the week or something, or like the day they sold, they were struggling with cash because they had such big inventory purchases from China, and it really kind of came down to the wire, which was fascinating to hear that right up until the very last minute, even.
Which we saw that, at a very small stage.
Yeah.
Yes, we buy stock and we're out of money.
So. And so I think them opening the doors to meet all those different people and to understand how they work internally, that really helped us there. But I think moreover, it was this whole idea of minimizing your downside and maximizing your upside. Free office space. They paid us a small amount. They gave us some free ad credits. They gave us training. There was no obligation to even sell on Amazon. In fact, we didn't have a product at the point at which we were on the program.
Oh wow, you didn't even have a product. And
so we had the launch.
Oh wow, okay. So really early stages.
Yeah. So it was I do think yes, they're a huge company, but because they're such a huge company, if they can make a change in sustainability, it can have an enormous impact. And more broadly, if they have a mission to move towards that, and they have a lot of initiatives which do that, then it's something I think philosophically we could all adopt, and hopefully we make the world a better place.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time, but I have two more questions for you. I would like to hear a little bit more about the US. How are you finding it? Where do you see the opportunities? And then I'll start with that question, and then we'll do one final one before I let you guys get back to your day jobs.
Cool. So we're in America all the time. In fact, next week, we'll be all traveling all around East Coast, West Coast, and various places in between. So we spend a lot of time out there, and I think it's a great market. I mean, it's the world's largest market for electric toothbrushes. And we have, really big fans, people who, oral care's, it's like a whole other level in America. I had to get my teeth done and whitened to make sure that, they were up to standard. You've got great teeth, Natalie, clearly. And so, yeah, I think it's a land of opportunity, but it's also a very competitive landscape. There's way more competition in electric toothbrushes. Just the geographical expanse makes distribution and shipping fees much more difficult from a business case.
And from a marketing point of view, I mean, I'm originally from New York, although I haven't lived there for quite some time, and we have a few Americans on the team, and so I always thought, we could just modify the marketing. We know gut feel what's right, what isn't. But it's not true. You do need to check that your messaging resonates, and there are nuances, very big nuances that if you can, what works here might not work there. Some of them we totally go wrong. Like we have on some of our ads British VOs, and I was like, nobody in the US wants to hear a British VO. They want to hear American, and I was totally wrong. In our research, people were like, British VOs sound smart. We want to hear British VOs. That designed in London sounds fascinating. And so it's kind of like, you really do need to test this stuff. Otherwise, gut feel has evolved, and you aren't always your prime prospect in terms of who you're going after. So we're very fortunate to have a team that is focusing we've hired a new head of growth who's come from New York recently to be on our team. And she's been doing a lot of consumer research, and we've been feeding that into our marketing strategy, which is helping a lot.
I think also importantly, what is it? If I read somewhere if the UK was the 51st state, it would be I don't know,
Michigan, or
it'd be like the 47th richest or something. So it's
oh, okay, I see where you're going. Yeah.
And like wealth wise, it's like, wow, it'd be one of the poorer states. And then population wise, it's like, like smaller than several of the states. And so then this like mindset of like, oh, the UK is actually like America's so big. So to think of it even as one country is perhaps to miss the nuances between, specific cities or specific states. And there's just such a variety of consumers and shoppers there. So,
and competition, as you say. Yeah, like when I got my wife's family lives in Michigan, whenever I go to the large stores there, and I have to literally pan my camera to take a photo of the shelf of oral care products. It's like an entire aisle and mouthwash bottles that are this big, like 2 liters.
Yeah,
this makes
they would never fit in a like London terraced Victorian home.
Nowhere. Yeah.
Oh, so interesting. So just to wrap up, for any founder looking to challenge the status quo like you guys have done, I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts on what they should be doing. So I would imagine that belief, self-belief and confidence and maybe acceptance of failure, like we talked about earlier, those are probably all important factors. But I'd love to get your view. What advice do you have for other challenger brands out there?
I mean, the one that I always say is listen to the consumer. Try to get as close as you can to them. And I'm not talking friends and family, right? They will always be on your side. You want the person who's going to challenge you with your product and maybe be super blunt, say like too expensive, looks like crap. And get those insights early on by any means possible. SurveyMonkey, $100 will get you 200 participants responding within an hour to a survey that you can build. Because those insights will define whether or not what you're doing is what people will be willing to pay for later on. And I used to say this internally. I know I stole it from somewhere, but you want to create no longer MVP, minimal viable product. That was what people were creating maybe 10 years ago. The landscape's become so competitive. Anybody can go onto Alibaba, find a brand, skin it even, and start selling. And so because of that, anybody can become an entrepreneur overnight by just buying products and getting some branding work done on Fiverr and launching on Amazon. So what you want to create is a minimal lovable product. So the first version that you come out with, and if it is a hardware product, it's hard to get to a decent first version because you not like software that you can ship updates very quickly. You've got to do those over time and slowly. It's got to leave an impact so that people love it so much that they'll do free advertising, word of mouth, as we said earlier. We like to also have a FOMO effect so that, we've sold a lot of brushes over Christmas. People in the house will see those brushes and go, I want one too. And so if you can really create something that touches people through the design, through the use and interaction, and is unique enough and differentiate through the insights that you've on mind, then you will always have a winning proposition.
I love that. Minimal lovable product. That's great. Well, Gyve and Mark, it's been such...
I like to think I came up with it, but I don't know where I found it.
That's all right. Well, listen, it's been such a pleasure having you both on. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.